Mega Evolution is back at the forefront of Pokémon thanks to the upcoming release of Pokémon Legends ZA, the first game to have Mega Evolution since Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee in 2018. But while many are super hyped for its return, I actually haven't missed Mega Evolution as much as most. In this video, I'll discuss the problems I have with the gimmick and how Legends ZA could solve them. And maybe already has. Let's start with a brief history of Mega Evolution and my experience with it to provide a wider context to my arguments. Mega Evolution was officially revealed in August of 2013, around 2 months before the release of X and Y, and several months after Mega Mewtwo Y was teased, but not named as a Mega Evolution. I distinctly recall being extremely hyped about this. It caught me completely off guard, since this was the first time any non-legendary or mythical Pokemon got new forms. Okay, technically Rotom got some, and Rotom's not a legendary, but they really treated it like one in the early days. I was also specifically excited because Blaziken got a Mega, which meant that my favorite Pokemon, Sceptile, was definitely gonna get one too. And look, I even found this comment I left on the reveal trailer, full of wildly incorrect predictions. X and Y came out in October 2013, and during my first playthrough of Pokemon X, I loved Mega Evolution. I was so enraptured by the first 3D Pokemon game and my super awesome Mega Charizard X that I had no criticisms whatsoever. I was telling people these were the best Pokemon games ever made. And then, less than a year later, Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire were announced. And not long after that, so were Mega Sceptile and Mega Swampert. This was less than a year into my Pokemon YouTube success taking off with How Old is Ash Ketchum, so without a coherent YouTube strategy at the time, I made a quick news video with my reaction. Ah, youth. Then when the games came out, I was ecstatic and played through them with this team, intentionally chosen such that all but Crobat could Mega Evolve. I'd simply swap out which ones I'd Mega depending on the battle. Except for Gallade, which I not only had to get by trading over a Dawnstone from my X version, because normally you can't get a Dawnstone until you beat Wally in the Victory Road, but also you can't get the Gallade until you've completed the Delta episode. That was annoying. But overall, when I first played through X and Omega Ruby, I had not a bone to pick. I was still a kid, basically, 18, 19, and I was very much still in the stage where I thought all new Pokemon games were completely perfect. That stage is over now. Look at me. I'm 30, and as time has gone on, I've developed criticisms toward Mega Evolution despite adoring it initially. The first one developed as I've replayed the Gen 6 games over the years, and it's a criticism specific to those games. It can be boiled down to Mega Evolution's not being there. Mega Evolution is blatantly cool. A fully evolved Pokemon surpassing its limits, it's just so exciting, and it makes the battles feel extremely epic. So in Gen 6, the generation that introduced it and put a huge emphasis on it, why do we barely get to see it? This criticism has two halves, and the first one is that NPC trainers don't use Megas enough. In X and Y, you get access to Mega Evolution right after getting your 3rd gym badge. But then, for the rest of the main story, you will fight a total of only 3 Mega Evolutions: Karina's Lucario, Lysander's Gyarados, and Diantha's Gardevoir. And really only the latter 2 of those count, since Karina's battle is forced as a Lucario versus Lucario battle. Oris is not much better. You get Mega Evolution at a later badge, but around the same team levels, in the 30s. But you will again only fight 3 Megas before the post-game: the team leader's Ace, Wally's Gallade, and Steven's Metagross. This is insane! These games guarantee you incredibly powerful Megas of your own. And that's not even including your Mega starter. When you don't have to face off against other Megas, so much of the game ends up being so easy that it's trivialized. Haha, it is I, Guarantee Boy, and I need your advice. I'm thinking about making a career change. Crime is fun, but it only sometimes pays. Okay, what were you thinking? I want to be a programmer. Seems like a great career. The problem, though, is that I have absolutely no qualifications or time spent programming at all. Well, then you should try out Boot.dev, the sponsor of this video. Boot.dev teaches you back-end web development, including languages like Python, JavaScript, Go, and more. And you'll be doing what you'd do on the job, writing code and building real projects. However, it's unique because of the gaming aspects of it. Learning earns you experience, reward chests, and more. Boot.dev makes the learning process fun, since you can't achieve your goals if you're bored. Ooh, what a unique way to learn! So you've tried it? I have. I haven't written so much as a character of code in a decade and was never that great at it, but I found the start of the Python course to be straightforward, entertaining, and educational. Leveling up and hitting streaks gave me the same kind of satisfaction I get when doing those things in normal video games, but I was learning a valuable career useful skill in the process. The whole thing is also designed to be self-paced, so it's great for busy people with existing responsibilities. Like me! With my crime! Sure, like you and your crime. Try out Boot.dev's courses for free using the link below, then use my code MandJTV to get 25% off your entire first year if you choose the annual plan. Amazing! Thanks, pal! Now I can work toward a career that not only won't have the risk of jail time, but also might finally give me dental! Ta-ta! I understand that if you get megas in the 30s, some team members may not be fully evolved yet. A Vibrava is gonna get curb stomped by a Mega Aggron despite having the type advantage. But once your team gets to the mid-40s and definitely 50s, there should be no more hand-holding. And for a bit there is. You fight the evil team leader and they're Mega. From that point on, all the major boss fights should have had Megas, and they don't! It's the main focus of these games! Where are the Megas? Compare this to the boss trainers in the generations that came later. Every Kahuna and Elite Four member can use Z moves. Every Galar gym leader except Milo and Piers not only uses Dynamax, but uses a signature Gigantamax form. And Milo ends up using one of those later in rematches, since he's normally fought too early to use a Flapple or Appleton initially. And then all the Paldea gym leaders in Elite Four use Terastallization. Now, of course, there is a big difference here. Z moves, Dynamax, and Terastallization can be used on any Pokemon, as opposed to Mega Evolutions being for specific species. But still, think about Galar. They designed specific Gigantamax forms to be the aces for the gym leaders. Why did they not do that with the Mega Evolutions in Gen 6? If I was redesigning the Gen 6 games, first in X and Y, Wolfric, your rival in the Victory Road, and the Elite Four all should have used the Megas that they do either in the anime or later in the post-game. Similarly, in Oris, Wallace and the Elite Four should have used Megas too, since thankfully Wally already does. Wait, how did it take me this long to realize that Wallace and Wally have very similar names? Are they the same guy? The Hoenn Elite Four actually have specific Megas that they use in the League rematches, which is better than X and Y where they never use Megas at any point, but it still frustrates me that they don't use them initially. As for Wallace, whew, poor Wallace. They definitely intended to make a Mega Milotic, maybe not in his gym battle, but in that post-game battle in the Delta episode, and they just didn't. I think they ran out of time or couldn't find one that wasn't too similar to all the fan art. I think the same thing happened with Flygon, so huge bummer there. But they should have swapped another one in. Mega Gyarados probably makes the most sense since it's the only Pokemon Wallace ever owns in Hoenn that can actually go Mega. But that's just one half of the problem. The trainers don't use Mega Evolution enough, but neither do you. In X and Y, there were 28 Mega Evolutions available at some point or another within the entirety of the games. Technically, there were 30 total, since Mega Latios and Latios are actually in the code of the game, but not only are they unobtainable, so was their Mega Stone. 4 of the Megas were starters, and you'll of course get 1 per playthrough before the League. One of them is Lucario, gifted to you as part of getting the Mega Ring, and 2 are Mewtwo, which is of course a post-game legendary. But then, of the remaining 21, only 5 of their Mega Stones are obtainable before the League. And one of those was the Blazikenite, which was event only and unobtainable from January 2014 onward. So if you were to start an X and Y playthrough today, that means you can use this fancy central mechanic of X and Y on a grand total of 6 different Pokemon. pre-league in one playthrough. It blows my mind how limited they made this major mechanic. Oris was much better on this front. Most of the Hoenn-Dex Megastones are obtainable reasonably early, but some are still locked to the post-game despite the Pokemon being catchable before then. Then several more Megas can be used once you get the National Dex upon stopping Groudon or Kyogre. This makes it so that eventually you can obtain both the Pokemon and its stone for a little more than half of the Megas that were available in Omega Ruby Alpha Sapphire, which still is not enough in my opinion, but at least it's better than X and Y. And what's kind of frustrating about this problem is that the solution is simple. Just make the Mega Stones available earlier, especially in X and Y. I understand there can be a rewarding feeling as part of the quest hunting them all down in the post-game once you have the upgraded Mega Ring, but that's overshadowed by the fact that it feels unfair. There's so many Pokemon that you could have gotten a really long time ago that you just arbitrarily were not able to Mega Evolve because they decided to toss the stone in the post-game. If you can get the Pokemon before the league, I feel you should have been able to Mega Evolve it before the league. The only exception I see are the cases where they really wanted a certain boss fight to be the first time you see a specific Mega. So, for example, I can forgive Gardevoir's Megastone being post-game only in Kalos because they wanted that to be a big reveal. But not all the other ones. Why the hell did I have to wait for Mega Heracross? Gen 7 also has this no Megas problem, but it doesn't bother me as much because Megas weren't the point. Alola makes the entire thing post-game, so that's a complete non-issue, but Let's Go is different. You gain Mega Evolution late, but still before the league, right after getting your 7th badge. Now, at first it appears that the two halves of the no Megas problem are in full force here. You can initially only Mega the original trio of Kanto starters, having to obtain the other stones post-game, and then in the league, your rival uses Mega Pidgeot as champion, but none of the Elite Four use Megas. Lance goes on to use Mega Charizard X in his rematch, but none of the other three ever use a Mega. However, as I said, in these games, Megas are not the point. They found a way to toss them in as a last bit of fan service before they moved on, as evidenced by the fact that most of them aren't even in the game. So like, I don't love that you could only Mega Evolve the Kanto starters before the league. I wish you could have Mega'd any of your team members, but I can stomach it more because the time that you're limited is really small. I'll admit, it would have been cool to see the Elite Four use more Megas, and I do think it's weird that Agatha doesn't use Mega Gengar at all, even in the rematch. Seriously, that's really weird, right? She's got 2 of them. But Lorelei and Bruno were screwed no matter what, since Kanto does not have any ice or fighting Megas. I guess Lorelei could have used Mega Slowbro, since while it's not an ice type, she does use Slowbro, but the Mega that would fit Bruno best is Mega Aerodactyl, I suppose, because he also uses some rock types. But it feels wrong. In short, Let's Go Megas are weird, but I can tolerate it because there really was not much emphasis on it. My issues with Mega Evolution go beyond their Gen 6 implementation, though. Even if they had nailed that and made it very accessible through the playthroughs, I would, and still do, have some other criticisms. I'll start by knocking out the small, frankly minor ones, and then move to the big one. One small gripe comes about because in games with Megas, I often end up using more than one, because, as a reminder, Mega Evolution is very cool. As I said earlier, my first Oris team had 5, and in my recent playthrough of the fan game, Heart Gold Soul Silver Sevi Islands, I also used a team with mostly Mega-capable Pokemon. However, because a Pokemon has to hold its Mega Stone to evolve, and I can only Mega one Pokemon per battle, that meant in most battles, most of my team had useless held items, or simply never went Mega at all. I understand why they used held items for this gimmick, because the reality is, if you have an extra powerful Pokemon, letting it hold an item to boost it even further would be super broken. So, thankfully they never did that. And thus this is a small complaint. It's really just kind of inconvenient when doing a playthrough. But I still feel like there could have been ways to make it more fluid to use more than one on your team. Using multiple Megas worked very smoothly in Let's Go because it didn't have held items at all, so a Pokemon not going Mega when it could have was unable to be a hindrance. It's not like it was missing out on holding a choice band. But in a game that does have held items, maybe the act of Mega evolving just like tosses away the item that you were holding, like knockoff. The real solution is to do what the competitive players did, which is just use one Mega, maybe two. But like, that's not as fun. I want to use a lot of the Megas. Again, they are cool. My next minor Mega Evolution gripe is how they presented it in the Pokédex in Gen 7. My most viewed short on this channel covers several instances of horrifying Pokédex entries about Mega Evolutions, which got their own specific entries starting in Sun and Moon. Here are a few examples. Mega Glalie in Ultra Moon. The power of Mega Evolution was so strong that it smashed Glalie's jaw. Its inability to eat very well leaves Glalie irritated. Mega Scizor in Ultra Sun. It stores the excess energy from Mega Evolution, so after a long time passes, its body starts to melt. Mega Sableye in Ultra Sun. Bathed in the energy of Mega Evolution, the gemstone on its chest expands, rips through its skin, and falls out. Jesus! And also, what the hell? This is one of the most insane retcons that Pokemon has ever done. Mega Evolution is supposed to be possible because of a strong bond between the Pokemon and the trainer. So what's with all this horrible stuff about it torturing the Pokemon? One theory I've seen is that it was a subtle primer to make people like Mega Evolution less, because Game Freak knew they were not going to include it in the next generation. If this theory is true, then that was silly. Like, people are gonna be upset about Mega Evolutions leaving no matter what. People like Megas. But now they're also upset about this disturbing lore, and you've put yourself in a corner for Legends ZA. Like, you're bringing back Mega Evolutions that now, canonically, torture the Pokemon. Are they just gonna gloss over it and pretend the Gen 7 Dex entries never existed? Honestly, probably. So those were my two minor general Mega Evolution complaints, but now for my biggest one, and I think it's the most important. Mega Evolution is bad for weak Pokemon. Mechanically, Mega Evolution can change a Pokemon's ability and type, as long as one of the original types stays, but both of these are optional. Aerodactyl changes only its ability. Audino changes only its type, depending on the ability that it started with. Sceptile changes both, and Latios changes neither. But what all Megas must do is add 100 to the Pokemon's base stat total. That doesn't necessarily mean that stats only stay the same or grow, though. Stats can actually drop as long as those points are redistributed such that the total ends up 100 higher. For example, Mega Garchomp is 10 points slower than regular Garchomp. They moved 10 of its speed points elsewhere. Additionally, abilities can artificially increase the stat gain, like Mega Mawile with huge power. But ignoring abilities, adding 100 is constant. This is notable because it means the stat buff is consistent across species, regardless of how strong the Pokemon was to begin with. Now, this would be fine if they only gave Megas to weaker Pokemon that needed help catching up, but that is not what happened. They gave Megas to already good Pokemon, like starters, and then went even further and gave them to pseudo-legendary Pokemon. Pokemon that start with base stat totals of 600, meaning they get up to 700, making them almost as strong as God. This pairs horribly with the fact that you can only Mega Evolve one Pokemon at a time. Particularly in competitive play, this meant that most Megas were almost never used. Why would you use Mega Sableye with a pathetic 480 stat total when 700 base stat total Mega Salamence is an option? Now, one valid counter to this is that the competitive scene will always be dominated by the small group of the absolute best Pokemon. So the top 6 to 8 Megas, maybe less, were always going to be disproportionately represented. But then in a playthrough, you can use the Megas of the weaker Pokemon, since they still benefited hugely from the phenomenon. However, even despite that, I would argue that the weaker Pokémon benefited in the short term, but were cursed in the long term. Two prime examples are Mega Mawile and Mega Kangaskhan. Regular Mawile is horrifically awful. It's got a great ability with Intimidate, and its Steel Fairy typing is one of the best in the game, but its base stat total is only 380, lower than Mudbray. So it's completely unusable in almost all contexts. But Mega Mawile was one of the best. It of course gained the 100 points to its BST, but it also gained the ability Huge Power, doubling its raw attack stat. But this actually more than doubles its effective base attack stat. A Mega Mawile at level 100 with no EVs and perfect IVs has an attack stat of 246. So doubled with Huge Power, that's 492. Doing some math with the stat formula, which I actually did. Look at that. Algebra. This means it has an effective base attack stat of 228. The highest in all of Pokemon by almost 40 points. This made its effective base stat total 603, just stronger than a Pseudo. It was an astronomical leap in power. Kangaskhan had a similarly dramatic rise. Kangaskhan started much stronger than Mawile, but it wasn't good enough to be anything more than meh. But then Mega Kangaskhan was not only much more powerful in the stat department, but its ability Parental Bond, allowing each of its moves to hit twice, just with reduced power the second time, made it the best not Rayquaza Mega. And in the competitive sequences, maybe better than Mega Rayquaza just due to the restricted Pokemon limits. It could get 2 attack boosts using Power Up Punch once, it did way more damage with Fake Out, and even after Parental Bond's nerf in Gen 7, it was one of the best Pokemon out there. In short, Mawile and Kangaskhan were forgotten, weak Pokemon, but their Megas were incredible. But notice how I'm using the past tense here? That's because once Mega Evolution went away, Mawile and Kangaskhan went right back to obscurity. And that would not have happened to them if they'd instead received new permanent evolutions. I'll admit my bias here, I really love new gen evolutions of old gen Pokemon. I pick that over any kind of new form every time. Not only do many of them end up being extremely cool, Gliscor and Crobat being some of my all-time favorite Pokemon, but I also really appreciate when an underpowered Pokemon gets a new chance at life. Seadra was one of Kanto's many unimpressive water types, but Kingdra is the powerful ace of multiple gym leaders. Togetic was genuinely useless, while Togekiss is amazing, especially after becoming Fairy type. Primeape and Girafarig were forgotten bad Pokemon, but Annihilape and Farigiraf are awesome and very good. Farigiraf is already a world champion. Things can always change, Pokemon has broken trends before, but as of recording this video, no Pokemon that got a Mega Evolution has ever gone on to get a new permanent evolution. Sure, many of the Mega species will never get new evolutions since they were already 3rd stage, but others like Sableye, Medicham, Mawile, Sharpedo, and Camerupt, weak Pokemon that would really benefit from new permanent evolutions, now cannot get them. Because a Pokemon that can go beyond regular evolution cannot just later do regular evolution. This means that years later, Mawile and Kangaskhan are depressed, doom scrolling their phones all day, wishing they could relive their glory days. Meanwhile, Pokemon like Seadra are living a life of joy, because over 20 years after Gen 2, it can still turn into Kingdra. With the exception of Let's Go, but that was a weird fever dream and I hated that they did that anyways. There of course remains the possibility that some of these Pokemon could get alternate forms that evolve, like Galarian Linoon evolving into Obstagoon, but that's not happening in Legends ZA because Mega Evolution is coming back, and thus these Pokemon will just be Mega Evolving. So they'll have a chance to shine again, but only for now. Alright, those are my problems with Mega Evolution. So how can Game Freak fix them in Legends ZA? Well, some of them they might have already done with one big significant change, but before that, let me cover the problems that they might fix, but I don't know if they will at the time of recording. First, my problem with the Gen 6 game's lack of Mega presence. ZA can solve this by simply giving the player, and NPCs, extensive access to Mega Evolution. Most, if not all, non-legendary Megas should be available before completing the main story. I also expect new Megas to be introduced, and those in particular should be made very accessible. I want to use the cool new stuff. As for the disturbing lore from the Gen 7 Pokedex, I don't know how they'll address that. Like I said, I think they're probably just gonna gloss over it, and I guess I can live with that. Again, it was a minor gripe. Then with the problem of Megas preventing weak Pokemon from getting permanent buffs, they can avoid worsening the problem by not giving Megas to any Pokemon that need permanent evolutions. Then hopefully in games after ZA, Pokemon like Sableye can get a regional form that can then evolve. But then the last two issues, the clunkiness of using more than one Mega and the weaker Megas always being benched for stronger ones, may already be squared away, because Mega Evolution is now temporary. Well, I guess it's always been temporary, but I mean like temporary within the duration of the battle. If you look closely at this footage, you'll see the Mega Evolution button in the bottom right corner, and it appears to be something that charges up over time, like an ult in many other video games, but it remains unclickable if the Pokemon that's battling cannot Mega Evolve. So once the gauge has sufficiently charged, you can hit the button, then Mega Evolve your Pokemon. But look closely here. Its charge is going down as time passes. I cannot say with complete certainty, but this heavily implies that when that gauge runs out, your Pokemon goes back to normal. This is fantastic, and it's perfect for the new real-time battle system. Mega Evolution is no longer just a cheeky way to have a higher base stat total Pokemon on your team. You have to time it and use it strategically. I also think this time limit could work in turn-based battles too, such as in the upcoming Pokemon Champions. Maybe Megas become like Dynamax, where a Mega Evolution only lasts a few turns. Just don't let any Megas like activate Intimidate too many times. Like, we know from Incineroar that is OP. This in-battle timer also means that having multiple Megas is no longer as much of a hindrance. If the battle is long enough, you could use one Mega, have the charge run out, then build up another one and use a different Mega. Using multiple becomes easy, and it means that it can make sense to use one overpowered Mega and one that isn't as strong but works better in certain matchups. And it seems like they want us to use more than one. This trainer uses both Lucario and Gardevoir, this one Gengar and Ampharos, and this one Alakazam and Gyarados. This is good! Mega Evolution is more fun when we get to use a variety of them. I will say the multiple Mega system does work better because at least I don't believe we're getting held items in ZA. It's a real-time battle system, so like the typical held items we're used to would not really work the same. And that's fine. I'm excited to try the new battle system. Now, like I said, I have not missed Megas that much, but if they nail the upgrades in ZA, and it seems like they very well might, I am really excited to use them again. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to check out another one of my video essay style videos, I recommend this one where I talk about why Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl are the worst Pokemon games ever made, even including the Gen 1 games that were full of all kinds of problems.